me wear a bathing suit I didn't like, I took off running. But I wasn't really thinking about where I was going until I realized I was naked in the middle of the pool area. Roderick used to run away a lot, too. When he was in first grade, he'd take off every day at the same time, but he'd come back home when Mom told him his favorite TV show was on. When Manny tried to run away a third time today, Mom bought a retractable leash at the front desk to try and keep him under control. Mom also got a bandage for Roderick's foot so we could start going into restaurants as a family again. Finally, the veterinarian was ready to see me, and the nurse led us into the exam room. My palms started getting sweaty because I always get a little nervous when it's time to see the doctor. I'm not a big fan of needles, and Mom knows it, so whenever I need to get a flu shot or something, Mom doesn't tell me it's coming. She'll try to distract me with something, and by the time I figure out what's going on, it's too late, and the doctor has snuck up on me. But there weren't any shots this time around. Mom told the vet what had happened, and she took a look at my finger. The vet said there was nothing to worry about since the pig's teeth hadn't broken the skin. She put some antibacterial ointment on my finger just to be safe, and then sent me on my way. I gotta say, I was pretty impressed by the whole veterinarian experience. The doctor was no nonsense and didn't ambush me with any needles. I figure when we get back home, I might research some veterinarians in our area. I'm not saying I'm definitely going to make the switch, but I do want to see what my options are. After the vets, Dad spent some time trying to get the gum out of the sunroof with a popsicle stick, but it was too messy and eventually he gave up. Dad didn't like not being able to close the sunroof, so he drove around trying to find a mechanic who could fix it, but nobody he talked to would do it for under $100. So Dad went to a grocery store and bought some cellophane and duct tape, and he fashioned his own sunroof. I think Dad was pretty proud of himself for saving money on repairs, especially when it started to rain and his homemade sunroof held up. But after a while, the cellophane started filling with water, and bugs were sloshing around in there. Eventually, the whole thing gave way, and for once I was glad to be sitting in the back because I was the only one who didn't get soaked. We parked under an overpass and waited for the rain to clear up while Manny and Roderick changed into some dry clothes. The trip was a total disaster up to this point, and even Mom was ready to admit it. She said it probably wasn't such a good idea to do everything according to the magazine, and that if we switched things up a little, maybe we could turn the trip around. Mom said that from then on, we'd go wherever the road took us, and we'd make decisions as a family along the way. She said the rest of the trip could be like those choose-your-own-adventure books. I always liked those books, because on every page you get to make a decision that changes the story. The ancient statue has a priceless gem in its eye socket. The inscription at the base of the statue reads, "Steal from me and perish. What do you do?" If you pry the gem from the statue, turn to page 40. If you stop and pet the kitten, turn to page 23. The problem is, I never seem to make the choices that get me to a happy ending. In fact, it seems like no matter what choice I make, it's always the wrong one. When you step onto the dais to pet the kitten, the ground beneath you gives way, opening into a deep chasm. You fall to the bottom and die. Better luck next time. The end. I wasn't so sure about Mom's new approach, but I figured anything was an improvement as long as I didn't get bit by any more pigs. After the rainstorm passed, we got back in the car and gave Mom's idea a try. When we reached our first intersection, she asked everyone if we should turn right or left or go straight. So we held a vote. Me and Roderick voted to turn right, and that's what we did. And when we got to another intersection, we voted again, and this time we turned left. We drove into this little town that had 2 restaurants, and after we voted, we went to one that ended up having the best apple pie I've ever tasted in my life. In fact, it was so good, we ordered a second one. Mom was really pleased with herself for coming up with this new approach, and said she was going to write in to Family Frolic and tell them about it. The only person who wasn't having a good time was Manny, who still seemed upset about the pig. Mom kept the leash on him even while we were eating to make sure he didn't try and run away again. After lunch, Mom asked me to take Manny to the bathroom, which only had one toilet in it. She told me to make sure he stayed on his leash, so I waited outside for him to do his business. Manny was in there for a while, and I started to wonder what was taking him so long. I finally opened the door, and he was gone. He had managed to unhook the leash, tie it to the toilet seat, and escape. Luckily, Dad saw Manny through the front window of the restaurant and scooped him up before it was too late. Because if it had been another minute or two, who knows how far he would have gotten. We got back in the van, and Mom strapped Manny into his car seat. When we got to a stoplight, everyone agreed that we should go left, and we waited for the light to change. When it turned green, Dad stepped on the gas, but a car came out of nowhere and totally ran the red light. Dad laid on the horn, but the driver just kept on going. Then another car ran the light, and then another. It was like nobody even noticed that the light was red. Dad was getting pretty frustrated, and when he saw a gap between two cars, he put the pedal to the floor and hung a left. We barely squeezed in front of the next car, which also ran the light. When I looked back at the car behind us, I noticed something weird. There was a little flag on either side of the hood. Mom noticed the flags too, and she got really upset. She said the vehicles behind us were part of a funeral procession. She explained that during a funeral, cars are allowed to go through red lights on their way from the church to the cemetery so they can all stick together. And now we'd gone and cut off the line of cars. Dad was getting panicky that all the cars behind our van were now following us, and he tried to shake them off our tail by making a few quick turns. It didn't work, though. Dad said he was going to get back on the highway and try to lose the cars that way, but Mom said the least we could do was lead the people behind us to the cemetery. So Mom typed cemetery into the GPS, and there was one just a few blocks away. We drove through the gates and parked along the side of the path. Everyone who was following us got out of their cars, but they seemed confused. One look at the gravestones, and it was clear what had happened. Apparently, the GPS treats all cemeteries the same, and it had taken us to a pet cemetery. Luckily, Dad got us out of there before things got ugly. After escaping with our lives from the pet cemetery, everyone decided it would be best to just pack it in for the night. So we found a hotel a few miles away and got a room on the 7th floor. Dad wasn't comfortable leaving all our stuff in the van, since someone could get in through the sunroof and steal whatever they wanted, so we had to take everything into the hotel. This morning, Mom wanted to keep going with the choose-your-own-adventure plan. I was starting to wonder if it was such a great idea, since it almost got us killed yesterday, but Mom was sticking with it. She grabbed a bunch of brochures from the front desk and brought them to breakfast so we could figure out what we wanted to do for the day. There were brochures for a ghost tour, a dino play place, and Conway Caverns. There were actually too many options, and nobody could agree on what to do. Dad wanted to take an all-day guided tour of a Civil War battlefield. Mom wanted to go to the beach, and Roderick wanted to go to the Electric Guitar Museum. What looked like the most fun to me was a place called Soak Central. We went to a water park last summer, but got rained out, so I figured this would make up for it. But Mom read through the brochure and said Soak Central looked artificial, and that the whole point of this trip was to avoid places like that. Since nobody could agree on anything, Mom said she was making an executive decision, and that we were going to the beach. Dad didn't complain because I'm sure he was thinking that if we were going to the shore, he might actually get a chance to use his boat. I'm really not much of a beach person myself. Whenever we go to one, we bring a blanket and spread it out, then sit there for the whole day. And you can't really go anywhere because you're worried someone will take your spot. The last time we went to the beach, Dad brought the tarp he uses to cover the boat so we'd have more room for our family and all our stuff. But the tarp was at least twice the size of our old blanket, and it took up a ton of space on the beach. Not to mention the fact that it's made of plastic, so with the sun beating down, it was like sitting in a frying pan. It was especially embarrassing when the rest of my family went to grab lunch on the boardwalk and I had to hang back on the tarp by myself to watch our stuff. So I wasn't real excited about going to the beach, especially since I knew Dad had his boat tarp with him. The beach was a few hours' drive away, so I decided to take a nap until we got there. And believe me, with all the junk piled up in the back of the minivan, it wasn't easy. I woke up when the van slowed down. I thought we were at the beach, but we hadn't even gotten to the bridge yet. It seemed like everyone had the same idea we did, so there was a ton of traffic. When we were about a quarter of a mile from the bridge, I could tell Dad was starting to get nervous. He hates bridges because for some reason he gets dizzy whenever he has to drive over one. The bridge to the beach is one of those kinds that's really high above the water, and I'm sure Dad wasn't looking forward to being stuck on it for the next half hour. Mom told Roderick he could drive, so we pulled over and everyone switched seats. Dad took my place in the back so he wouldn't see the bridge out the front window, and I moved to the middle row. When Roderick got in the driver's seat, he took advantage of Dad's radio rule and blasted heavy metal music, and I could tell that wasn't helping Dad's nerves. We were only going about 3 miles an hour. It looked like we were going to be stuck on the bridge even longer than I expected, so I opened the bag of cheese curls Roderick bought at the grocery store. There was a seagull sitting on the bridge railing next to our minivan, and it looked right at me. I guess I kind of felt sorry for it, so I tossed a cheese curl out of the sunroof. I have to say, I was pretty impressed when the seagull caught the thing in midair. I was about to throw it another one, but Mom stopped me. She said seagulls are really aggressive, and giving them people food is a bad idea. She was right about the aggressive thing, because 2 seconds later the seagull was on top of the car looking through the sunroof, and you could tell it wanted more food. I threw another one at it to try and make it go away, but the seagull bobbled the cheese curl, which fell right back into the car. That's when things got bad. The seagull hopped down into the car and ate the cheese curl off the floor. For a second, everyone was in a state of shock that a seagull was in our van, and nobody moved a muscle. The seagull squawked a few times and then tried to fly back out the way it came in, but it missed the opening by about 2 feet and smacked into the roof. Then it just went completely nuts, flying around and crashing into the windows. Everyone was in a total panic, and feathers and cheese curls were everywhere. Then the seagull got greedy and grabbed the bag of cheese curls off the floor, but I snagged it and held on for dear life. Everyone was yelling at me to let go of the bag, but I wasn't giving in. Finally, the seagull beat me in our tug-of-war and flew straight up through the sunroof, taking the cheese curls with it. But the seagull didn't get far because a bunch of other seagulls attacked the bag as soon as it popped out the roof. About 3/4 of the cheese curls ended up back in the minivan, which was a total nightmare for us because the whole flock of seagulls came flying